My name is Lena Hayes, and I built Viridian Dynamics from a single desk in a borrowed corner of a failing co-working space into a firm that redefined ethical consulting in the Pacific Northwest. 10 years. 10 years of 16-hour days, skipped birthdays, hospital visits postponed because a client was imploding, and the kind of sleepless nights where your brain hums like a live wire. I didn't just work for Viridian, I was Viridian. Its integrity was my spine, its success my heartbeat. Or so I thought. I arrived at the office that Tuesday morning not with my usual brisk stride, but with a strange, hollow feeling in my gut. It had been building for weeks, the hushed calls that cut off when I entered a room, the way my CFO, Mark, suddenly avoided eye contact, the board meetings that felt less like strategy sessions and more like rehearsals. Rehearsals for what? I couldn't pinpoint. Arrogance, maybe. Or just the sheer, bone-deep exhaustion of carrying the weight of everything for so long. I'd pushed it down, focused on closing the biggest deal of my career, the acquisition by Omnicorp. It was supposed to be the culmination, the validation, the exit that would secure my team's future and fund a dozen new ventures. Omnicorp promised resources, global reach, stability. They'd sung the siren's song beautifully. The elevator doors slid open onto the 12th floor, and the sound hit me first. Not the usual low murmur of keyboards, phone calls, the gentle whir of the espresso machine. This was the sharp, brutal symphony of destruction. The scrape of metal on concrete, the heavy thud of cardboard hitting the floor, the tearing of paper. My stomach dropped like a stone through ice water. I stepped out, my sensible heels clicking on the polished concrete, the sound absurdly loud in the chaos. My office, my sanctuary, the room where I'd cried over lost clients, celebrated impossible wins, stared out at the Seattle skyline plotting the next move, was being gutted. Two men in generic gray uniforms I didn't recognize were systematically emptying my filing cabinets. My meticulously organized client files, the ones containing years of confidential strategies, personal notes, the very DNA of Viridian's work, were being unceremoniously dumped into flimsy cardboard boxes. My framed degrees, the hard-won MBA, the undergrad in environmental policy that started it all, lay face down on the floor, glass shattered. My ergonomic chair, the one I'd special ordered after my third back spasm, was shoved haphazardly against the wall, wheels askew. My desk, the beautiful reclaimed walnut slab I'd chosen myself, was bare except for a single, mocking post-it note stuck to its surface. But it wasn't just my office. Through the glass walls, I saw it happening everywhere. My team's workstations, Maya's vibrant plant collection uprooted, Ben's intricate model of a sustainable cityscape knocked over, Priya's meticulously color-coded project boards ripped down, were being stripped bare. Boxes were stacked haphazardly in the open plant area, labeled with impersonal codes. The air smelled of dust, stale coffee, and something else, the acrid tang of betrayal. "Hey! What the hell is going on?" My voice, usually calm and measured, cracked like a whip. It startled the two men, who froze, hands full of my life's work. One of them, a burly guy with a tattoo snaking up his neck, just shrugged, avoiding my eyes. "Orders from upstairs, ma'am. Omnicorp transition team. Gotta clear the space." "Omnicorp? My office? My team space? Without even telling me?" The disbelief was a physical pressure behind my eyes. This wasn't transition. This was erasure. A surgical strike to remove me before I could even process the deal closing. The acquisition paperwork had been signed just yesterday. The champagne hadn't even been chilled yet. I strode past them, my legs trembling not with fear, but with a cold, rising fury that burned away the exhaustion. I needed to find Mark. He was the CFO, my supposed partner, the one who'd vouched for Omnicorp's synergy. I found him in what used to be the small conference room we called the Hive, now stripped of its whiteboards and comfy chairs. He stood by the window, staring out, his back to me, holding a cardboard box of his own. He looked relieved. And guilty. "Mark." My voice was low, dangerous. "Explain. Now." He flinched, turning slowly. His face was pale, his usual confident smirk replaced by a tight, anxious line. "Lena, you weren't supposed to be here today. They said you'd be at the Omnicorp welcome breakfast." "Welcome breakfast?" I laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. "While they're dismantling everything I built. While they're throwing my team's livelihoods into boxes like trash. What did you do, Mark?" He wouldn't meet my gaze, fiddling with the edge of the box. It's bigger than you, Lena. Bigger than Viridian. Omnicorp, they have plans. Streamlining. Consolidation. Your approach, it wasn't scalable for their vision. They needed a clean slate. My approach. The words felt like shards of glass in my throat. My approach is why Viridian had value. It's why OmniCorp wanted us in the first place. Ethics, integrity, long-term relationships. That wasn't just marketing fluff, Mark. That was the foundation. He finally looked at me, his eyes pleading, but also hardening with a defensive edge. Foundations change, Lena. The market changes. OmniCorp offered security. For everyone. A future. Your way, it was becoming a liability. Too slow. Too personal. He gestured vaguely towards the destruction outside. This is just efficiency. They're integrating us properly. Integrating. I spat the word. This looks like a hostile takeover disguised as a merger. And you sold us out. You sold me out. The realization hit with the force of a physical blow. The hushed calls, the avoidance, the rehearsed board meetings. He'd been negotiating my obsolescence behind my back. While I was out there, bleeding for the deal, he was ensuring I'd have no place in the new structure. He hadn't just facilitated the acquisition, he'd orchestrated my removal. A wave of nausea washed over me, followed by a terrifying clarity. They hadn't just taken my office. They'd taken my identity, my purpose, the future I'd promised my team. And they'd done it with the complicity of the man I'd trusted most. The hollow feeling in my gut wasn't exhaustion anymore. It was the void left by shattered trust. I turned away from Mark, unable to look at his cowardice any longer. My eyes swept over the carnage, the scattered files, the overturned chairs, the faces of my team members peering out from their half-emptied cubicles, their expressions a mixture of shock, fear, and dawning horror. Maya, her eyes red-rimmed, clutching a wilting succulent. Ben, standing protectively over the pieces of his model city. Priya, her arms crossed, jaws set, but her usual fierce energy dimmed. They looked lost, betrayed, just like me. The fury that had been cold began to ignite into something hotter, sharper. This wasn't just about me. It was about them. About the years of loyalty, the late nights, the shared victories and defeats. OmniCorp and Mark thought they could just sweep us aside, discard us like outdated hardware. They thought Viridian was just a name on a door, a set of assets to be absorbed. They were wrong. Viridian was the people. It was the principles. It was the work. And they'd made a critical mistake. They'd left me standing here, in the ruins of what they thought was my tomb, while I still had one weapon they hadn't accounted for, my mind. And my phone. I walked back towards my desecrated office, past the indifferent movers. My hands were steady now, the trembling replaced by a focused intensity. I ignored the shattered glass, the empty shelves, the mocking post-it. I pulled my phone from my pocket. My thumb hovered over the screen. Not Mark's number. Not OmniCorp's sleek, corporate line. I scrolled past dozens of contacts, clients, lawyers, journalists, old mentors, even a few carefully cultivated contacts within OmniCorp's own labyrinthine structure, contacts I'd nurtured over years precisely for moments when the official channels failed. My finger stopped on a name, Arthur Finch. Arthur wasn't just a contact, he was a legend. A retired investigative journalist who'd made his name decades ago exposing corporate malfeasance so deep it toppled governments. He was also, crucially, deeply skeptical of OmniCorp's recent, aggressive expansion tactics. And he owed me a favor. A big one. I'd quietly provided him with key documentation that helped him expose a toxic waste cover-up by one of OmniCorp's subsidiaries 3 years back. He'd never forgotten it. "Call me if the wolves ever circle your door, Lena," he said gruffly over a terrible diner coffee. "I owe you a hunt." The movers were loading the last box from my office onto a dolly. One of them glanced at me, a flicker of something, pity, in his eyes before looking away. Mark was still in the conference room, probably drafting his own congratulatory email to his new OmniCorp overlords. I took a deep breath, the air thick with dust and despair. But beneath it, I felt something else stirring. Not hope, not yet, but resolve. Cold, hard, and utterly focused. They thought they'd broken me by destroying my office. They thought they'd silenced Viridian by packing it away in boxes. They were about to learn the difference between a building and a legacy. I tapped Arthur Finch's name. The phone rang once. Twice. On the third ring, a gravelly voice, sharp as broken glass, answered. "Finch." "Arthur," I said, my voice surprisingly calm, cutting through the noise of the destruction around me. "It's Lena Hayes. Remember that favor you owe me." A beat of silence. Then, a low chuckle that held no humor, only anticipation. "Hayes, I was wondering when you'd call. The wolves finally show their teeth." "They didn't just show them, Arthur," I said, watching the movers wheel the last box of my life out the door. "They're trying to bury me with them. And they've got my whole pack in the hole with me." "Where are you?" he asked, his voice dropping, turning serious. "Standing in the ashes of Viridian Dynamics." I said, my eyes locking onto Mark's retreating back as he finally left the conference room, heading towards the elevators, probably to his new, plush Omnicorp office downtown. But the fire's not out yet. In fact, I added, a spark igniting in my chest, brighter than the fluorescent lights overhead. I think it's just getting started. I need you to find something for me. Something Omnicorp thinks is buried so deep no one will ever see it. Name it, Arthur said, the hunter in him fully awake now. I looked down at the post-it, note still stuck to my bare desk. Someone had scrawled 2 words in messy handwriting, clean slate. A cruel joke. My slate wasn't clean. It was smeared with their greed and betrayal. But maybe I could use that slate to write a different ending. Everything, I said, my voice hardening into steel. I need everything you can find on Omnicorp's acquisition playbook. Their dirty deals, their hidden clauses, their creative accounting. Especially anything related to Viridian Dynamics and a CFO named Mark Renard. And Arthur, I paused, watching the elevator doors close on Mark's back. Start with the subsidiary that handled the toxic waste spill in Portland. The one you exposed. I have a feeling their playbook hasn't changed much. Just the victims. A slow, predatory smile I couldn't see but could feel crackle down the line. Consider it done, Hayes. Consider it very, very done. You just gave an old dog a fresh scent. And this old dog loves digging up bones. I ended the call. The office was silent now, truly empty. Just me, the dust motes dancing in the shafts of gray Seattle light, and the echo of destruction. The hollow feeling was gone, replaced by a thrumming energy, a current of pure, focused intent. They'd taken my space, my title, my immediate future. But they hadn't taken my knowledge. They hadn't taken my network. They hadn't taken the fire that built Viridian in the first place. And they'd made one more fatal error. They'd left me with nothing to lose. I picked up the shattered frame of my environmental policy degree from the floor. The glass was sharp, cutting into my palm, but I barely felt it. The pain was clean, real. A reminder. I looked at the diploma beneath the broken glass, the symbol of the idealism that started this whole journey. Maybe it was time to get a little less idealistic. And a lot more dangerous. The movers were gone. Mark was gone. Omnicorp thought they'd won before the game even began. They thought Viridian Dynamics was finished. They hadn't met the woman who built it from nothing. And they had no idea what she was capable of when she had nothing left to protect but the truth. My fingers tightened around the broken frame. The game wasn't over. It had just changed rules, and I was about to rewrite them all. The first move was made. The call was placed. Now, the real work began. The quiet, meticulous, devastating work of making them regret the day they thought destroying my office was the end of me. It was only the beginning. 3 weeks. That's how long it took for Arthur Finch to unearth the rot. Not just the Portland toxic spill cover-up, though that was damning enough, but a pattern. A blueprint. Omnicorp didn't acquire companies to grow them. They acquired them to hollow them out, strip their assets, silence their voices, and bury their ethics under layers of legal jargon and offshore shell companies. Viridian wasn't special. We were just the latest in a string of idealistic firms lured in with promises of scale and purpose, only to be gutted the moment the ink dried. And Mark, he hadn't just sold us out, he'd been groomed. Omnicorp had been dangling a VP title and a 7-figure bonus in front of him for months, feeding his resentment over my stubborn idealism, whispering that I was holding Viridian back. He'd signed a side agreement before the main acquisition even closed, binding Viridian's key client contracts, proprietary methodologies, and even employee non-competes to Omnicorp's control without my knowledge. Legally, it was shaky. Morally, it was treason. Arthur sent me a single encrypted file. Inside, emails, wire transfers, internal Omnicorp memos referring to Viridian as Project Clean Slate, a name meant to signal total erasure. One memo chillingly read, Hayes is emotionally invested. Remove her early. Minimize disruption. Renard will manage internal optics. I sat in my tiny apartment, the one I'd kept as a just-in-case space during Viridian's boom years, staring at the screen until my eyes burned. The anger was still there, white-hot, but it had cooled into something far more useful, precision. Revenge wasn't about screaming. It was about symmetry. They tried to erase me quietly. I would dismantle them publicly, but I couldn't do it alone. I called my team. Not all of them. Some had already taken Omnicorp's generous severance and fled, too scared or too tired to fight. But Maya, Ben, and Priya, they showed up at my door that night, eyes wide, hearts bruised but unbroken. We're with you, Lena, Priya said, her voice steady. Whatever it takes. Ben nodded, holding the salvaged pieces of his model city. They stole our work. Let's steal it back. Maya just hugged me, her tears warm against my shoulder. You built something real. We won't let them pretend it never existed. That was the spark. We worked in secret, fueled by cold brew and righteous fury. Ben, our tech wizard, used his knowledge of Viridian's internal systems Omnicorp hadn't fully migrated yet, to access archived client communications and project files they tried to lock away. Priya, our legal eagle, combed through the acquisition documents with a forensic eye, finding loopholes Omnicorp's lawyers had missed in their arrogance. Maya, our heart and our networker, quietly reached out to Viridian's former clients, the ones who trusted us with their most vulnerable sustainability goals, and told them the truth. Omnicorp wasn't continuing our work. They were erasing it. And me. I called Arthur back. Got something bigger, he rasped. Omnicorp's CFO, the real one, not your Judas, approved off-the-books payments to shell companies linked to regulatory officials in 3 states, including Washington, including the guy who fast-tracked their Portland cleanup compliance. That's the leverage, I said. Not just leverage, Arthur corrected. A detonator. The plan formed like a storm gathering over Puget Sound. We wouldn't sue. Lawsuits took years, and Omnicorp had armies of lawyers. We'd go straight to the source of their power, their reputation, their stock price, their carefully curated image as a forward-thinking, responsible conglomerate. We built a website. Simple, clean, devastating. ViridianTruth.com. On it, we posted everything. Not just the emails and memos about us, but the pattern, dozens of other small firms Omnicorp had consumed and discarded. We included anonymized testimonials from former employees. We embedded Ben's recovered project files, proof of the ethical frameworks Omnicorp was now actively dismantling. And at the center, a single looping video. Me, standing in the empty shell of my office, holding the shattered diploma, speaking directly to the camera. They thought destroying my office would destroy me, I said, my voice quiet but carrying the weight of everything. They were wrong. You can't destroy an idea. You can't erase integrity. You can only choose whether to stand with it or against it. Omnicorp chose against it. Now the world gets to choose too. We timed the launch for the morning of Omnicorp's quarterly earnings call. The effect was instantaneous. News outlets picked it up within hours. First local, then national. Ethical consulting firm exposes Omnicorp's predatory acquisition tactics. Whistleblower CEO reveals Project Clean Slate strategy. Social media exploded. Viridian's old clients, major brands with sustainability pledges, publicly severed ties with Omnicorp. Investors panicked. Omnicorp's stock plummeted 18% before noon. Mark called me, frantic, his voice shrill with panic. Lena, what have you done? They're blaming me. They're saying I leaked everything. Funny, I said, ice in my veins. That's exactly what they planned to do to me. Enjoy your clean slate, Mark. I hung up. Omnicorp's legal team sent cease and desist letters. Threats. Empty bluster. But the truth was out, and it was spreading faster than they could contain it. Regulators launched investigations. The Department of Justice took an interest in those shell companies. 2 weeks later, Omnicorp's CEO resigned. Their CFO was placed on administrative leave. Mark vanished. Rumor had it he'd fled to Costa Rica with a fraction of his promised bonus, his reputation in tatters. And Viridian Dynamics? It wasn't gone. It was reborn. Not as a subsidiary, not as a brand under someone else's thumb, but as Viridian Collective, a worker-owned cooperative, founded by me, Maya, Ben, Priya, and a dozen other former Viridian employees who refused to be erased. We operated out of a shared space downtown, smaller but brighter, filled with the same plants Maya had rescued, the rebuilt model city on Ben's desk, Priya's color-coded boards alive with new projects. We took back our clients, one by one, not with promises of scale, but with promises of truth, of partnership, of the same integrity Omnicorp had tried to bury. The final blow came quietly. Arthur sent me a scanned copy of an internal Omnicorp memo dated the day after our website launched. The subject line, strategic retreat, Viridian asset liquidation. They weren't just walking away. They were abandoning everything they'd stolen from us, the client lists, the methodologies, the brand name itself, too toxic to keep. I printed the memo, walked to the site of our old office building. Omnicorp had already vacated the floor, leaving it sterile and empty once more. I lit the memo on fire with a match. Watched the flames consume the words Project Clean Slate. Then I dropped the ashes onto the polished concrete floor, the same floor where my world had ended just weeks before. This time, it wasn't an ending. It was a foundation. Because they've been right about one thing, you can destroy an office. Boxes, files, furniture gone in a day. But you can't destroy what built it. The courage, the conviction, the quiet, relentless belief that doing the right thing matters, even when it costs you everything. That doesn't live in a building. It lives in people. And we were just getting started.